going. So now we're going to talk about a very important verse. It says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So a lot of times the thoughts that we have in our mind become emotions. So if I'm thinking a certain thought, this thought becomes an emotion. The emotion becomes a behavior. So for example, if I say to myself, I am a very stupid person, I will never do this well, I am never going to be good enough. These thoughts eventually will make me feel sad and depressed. And then when I'm depressed, I'm going to isolate. I'm going to want to stay by myself. When I stay by myself, I will have more negative thoughts. And then these thoughts become almost very strong, and they keep repeating in my mind, and I can no longer take them out, and I start to believe them. They call this automatic thoughts. It's just a thought that comes to your mind when you're driving or when you're in school, and they're just negative. And a lot of times this leads to depression. Because if you're constantly thinking negative thoughts, I'm eventually going to feel depressed. So one of the most important things is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, is how can I challenge these negative thoughts? What can I say to myself to fight this negative thought? And we need to teach our children to do that as well. So if you find a child who's maybe depressed or anxious, we need to teach him how to challenge this negative thought that he has. For example, let's say you're in bed and you want to go mow the lawn. You want to do the lawn. And you say to yourself, I can't get out of bed. That's the thought. I can't get out of bed. And you believe it. And then you stay in bed. But what can you say to yourself to rebuttal that thought? Let's say you have, go ahead.
I can't get out of bed, but I don't want to.
Okay, I can, but I don't want to. Good step. What's after that?
The lawn is not going to mow itself.
The lawn is not going to mow itself. I can rest later. So this is how you teach someone to fight negative thoughts. So for example, you can tell yourself, why can't I get out of bed? I'm not paralyzed. My hands move, my legs move. I'm not paralyzed. Why am I saying I can't? So the key is we really want to teach these children how to fight this thought. And you can ask them questions to challenge the negative thought. For example, I'm stupid. Okay, why? Did you get everything wrong or did you get some right? So if you got some right, that means you are not, some things. And then you want to say, okay, why didn't you know this? Maybe it's because you did not put enough effort. Maybe the problem is not that you're stupid. Maybe the problem is you didn't get enough help or you didn't spend enough time. That's why we always want to praise effort, always, because we want kids to know it's effort that gives results. And that's why if you tell someone, oh, you're so smart, it's nice to encourage them and say you're so smart, but better than that is to say you did good because you worked hard. So now the child is associating working hard with getting good grades or with being successful.
I have a question. For kids who get older and they don't get this instant gratification or appreciation at work, would this affect them when they're older and then the boss is not telling them great job for every assignment that they finish?
No, because after that, they're full. Once you're full, it doesn't matter anymore. Once you're psychologically intact and you're doing good and you're successful, you're going to have very high self-esteem. You're not going to no longer wait for someone to give you this praise. You already know I'm doing good. You've already learned to think correctly. The way you think now has been fixed. And you've learned to rebuttal. So for example, let's say you're walking in church and someone doesn't say hi to you. And you say, oh, this person must hate me. Right? How do you know that? Where did that thought that this person hates you, where did it come from? Maybe maybe that person didn't notice you, right? Maybe that person was busy. What's that? Oh, yes. Yeah, so it could be so many reasons, but we believe that thought. We overgeneralize. Fortune telling. And again, I know what this person's thinking. How do you know? You don't know. It's not. And so that we need to learn to stop depending on what other people think. It's about what I think. And it's a challenge. Now, next time I have that thought, I can tell myself, wait a second, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to ask myself, is this really true? Is it not true? Maybe they're busy. Or maybe I can go ask them and say, hey, I noticed you didn't say hi, is everything okay? Instead of believing or going to this fortune teller or overgeneralizing. Just because one bad thing happened doesn't mean everything else bad is going to happen. So it's something called perception. The way we perceive something is very, very important. For example, you might have two people who get into a car accident. The same circumstance. One comes out of the car accident and says, my life is over. My car is destroyed. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get into a fight with my wife. And all this negative thoughts come into their head. And you might have another person with the same circumstance comes out and says, thank you God I'm alive. For the way you think is very, very important. And we need to teach the children how to think correctly so they don't fall into this trap of depression and anxiety. And we need to teach them how to challenge the negative thoughts. So that because they say something negative, we have to look into it further and say, is it true or is it not true? Or is it partially true? And why is it not true? So a lot of people who are depressed express a lot of self-dislike. They see themselves as defeated, defective, deserted, or deprived. And we need to make sure that they stubbornly refuse to buy into the sense of worthlessness. Because you cannot earn worth through what you do. It's not what you do that gives you worth. And achievements, when you achieve something, it can bring satisfaction, but it will never bring you true happiness. So self-worth that's based on this accomplishment is they call it pseudo-esteem. It's not genuine. So that's why you have a lot of people who are successful that are also very depressed. So that proves that just because you're successful doesn't mean you cannot suffer from depression. And there's a lot of people, celebrities, who commit suicide, and they have fame and they have everything and they still do it. So this happiness is not just achievements and it's not just fame. Some people think that that's what the case, but eventually they realize that they've done it and it still hasn't reached happiness. And your feelings do not determine your worth either. So irrational, self-defeating, and maladaptive thoughts, we need to learn to modify these thoughts and exert the effort. There is no such thing as a worthless human being. So learn to pinpoint the self-drowning thought and talk back and replace the thought with more objective, you can measure it, and self-endorsing thought. How can you endorse this child? This slide came a little bit, this was supposed to be after the oppositional defiant disorder. I think I misplaced it. But the conduct disorder, I don't think we're going to see this disorder very much, and I hope not. This is a very extreme side. Yani oppositional defiant disorder is the milder form of conduct. Well, conduct after someone turns 18 becomes antisocial. These people usually have persistent pattern of behavior in which the basic rights of others are violated. So these are people who break the law. So these are people who bully, they threaten, they intimidate, they usually start physical fights, they use weapons that can cause serious physical harm, they're physically cruel to people and animals, they steal things, they force people into sexual activity. Those are very serious disorder that is a lot worse than oppositional defiant, and here I would recommend that the child get professional help in this case, for sure. They can destroy property. A lot of times they set fires, they cause a lot of serious damage, they break and destroy other people's property. This is going into the realm of conduct, and obviously the end result for these people is jail. And we have to intervene very, very quickly because this can cause clinically significant impairment in their life. A lot of times you hear they break into other people's car, they're very deceitful, they lie quite often, they run away from home, they even without parental prohibitions. So defiant is defiant authority. This is more like breaking the law and going above and beyond. They're a lot of truancy. They just leave school without letting anyone know. And once they turn 18, it becomes a conduct disorder. And these people, unfortunately, they have a lot of struggle with empathy. They cannot feel what other people are feeling. They don't know how to feel remorse. They don't feel guilt at all. And maybe if you see someone in jail, when you assess someone with this type of disorder, let's say he's committed many crimes and murdered people, and you go ask him and say, well, if you were to go back, now you're going to spend your whole life in jail. If you were to go back in time, would you do anything different? His brain might tell you, yeah, I would have covered the evidence. I would have not done the crime. That's the type of person you're dealing with. That's the conduct. And usually we want to intervene very quickly. And many people with this disorder have a lot of trauma. So it's ubiquitous in someone with conduct disorder population, and it can account for many of the features of conduct, which is the lack of empathy. They become very impulsive, anger, they act out, very resistant to treatment. And in this case, we obviously need immediate intervention. Obviously, talk to the coordinator, the priest, and sometimes you need referrals to deal with people like that. And usually when you meet with the parents, you'll find there's a lot of neglect. The parents have very low IQ. They don't know how to deal with these children. Sometimes when they do bad things, they might deprive them of food. They might put their hand on the stove. They might do things that are very extreme that can lead to this. And a lot of times we hear this someone who's neglected even from a very, very young age. They may have cigarette burns. So when a doctor evaluates, usually they can tell there's some major issues when they're younger. Okay, let's deal with something that we will something more practical, something that we're going to see more often. How to deal with kids who are fighting. So do what is right and not what is easy. We're going to talk about how to give a command versus an intervention. So the most important thing is we want to get up, figure out what's wrong, and help them, the child, figure out how to solve their own problems. So we don't want to solve their problems, because sometimes when you do, you're not teaching them the skills they need to develop to solve their own problems, and you're not going to be there all the time. So the key is we want them to solve their own problems. And we need to give them parameters. We can guide, we can give parameters for working it out, and allowing them to stay or continue playing with each other only if they can do so peacefully. And what is the difference between a command and an intervention? You guys know what is an example of a command? What, to a child? Don't do that. Stop fighting. Give me this. Do not do this. Quit it. This is constant commands. Now let me ask you, do commands work? Clearly they don't. They failed miserably. Sometimes when they don't listen, we just say it louder. Quiet. They don't get quiet. So, I said be quiet, right? That doesn't work either. But sometimes we believe that being louder might be the answer. Sometimes we look for the easy way out. Like as a servant, you might say, hey, go to your parents. Or let's take them to Abuna. Abuna can solve everything, right? Let's go there. Or kick them out of the room. Or threaten them with consequences. And a lot of times we make empty threats. We say we're going to do this and we don't do it. That causes more confusion. And they all work against us instead of helping us. So the key is we want to be patient. And we want to allow them to learn how to solve these problems themselves. In addition, we want to validate their feelings. I understand this is hard. It's not easy to share. It's not easy to fight. And you can think of ways to solve this problem. Let's say they're fighting over a toy at a young age. You can say, oh, I'm just going to give the other person the same toy. And they might be quiet because now they have a toy. But did you solve the actual problem? No. They still haven't learned how to share. They still don't know how to do that. So you have to have this mindset in your mind is how my goal is to teach them life skills. I want them to learn these life skills. And the only way they're going to learn is if they solve their own problems. So I know this requires a lot of patience for us, but it's very, very important. Think of it like this. A child that learns to walk, right? He doesn't come out walking from the womb. It takes some time, okay? How many times do you let him fall before you give up? You don't give up, right? You continue because let's say I can stop him falling by carrying him all day. Is this going to help the situation? No, it's just going to delay the ability for him to walk on his own. So we have to really think long term in order for us to take this type of approach. So our end goal is we want these children to be independent. We want them to do the right thing without us forcing them to do the right thing. We want them to realize why I'm not going to do the bad thing. Why am I going to choose the right decision? The other thing is wishful thinking. Sometimes, a lot of times with the mom and dad, we'll figure this out and we want the easy way out because we're busy. So we want to watch the game. So you just want the kids, you give them what they want because you want to be alone and be able to watch your game and not be disturbed or get on with your job. And that's where you can say, kids, stop fighting. And unfortunately, they're not going to follow. How can you intervene? You can say, I know it's difficult to share. I know it's difficult and it's hard, but it's something we need to learn. Do I need to take this toy away? Or can you guys figure out a solution to continue playing without me having to take this toy? You see what you did? This is called an intervention. And now they're thinking. Now they're going to start thinking, okay, now we have to figure out a solution or else this toy is going to be taken away from us. And now you're allowing their brain to develop a solution for that problem. You're not just giving in or giving that command. So we need to know what the choices are and how do we know which one is best to use. And obviously, we give age-appropriate interventions at this point. And there's a book called Parenting Towards the Kingdom. I encourage everybody to get a copy if you can. This talks a lot about how to intervene. It's available in the monastery, in the abbey called Parenting. It's written by Philip Malakis. Mamalakis, that's correct, sorry. And it talks about how to connect, how to intervene, how to connect with the daily struggles of family life and parenting to the timeless truth of the Orthodox faith. And it's based on biblical principles. So understanding the process. We talked about we don't want to solve the problem. There's something called in medicine primary prevention, secondary prevention, tertiary prevention. These are the types of levels that we prevent disease. Primary prevention is avoiding the disease entirely. Like we give vaccine to prevent something from ever occurring. There's something called secondary where we screen the patient early so that we can detect and diagnose quickly. And then tertiary is now we're trying to minimize the negative effects. Primary prevention is not, we don't have that option with children, unfortunately. So there's no way that you're going to make your kids stop fighting. There's no way that you're going to make them to listen to what you tell them or stop talking back or cleaning their room all the time. These are children. Think of children. They are not problems to be solved, but children are people to be loved and guided. It's a process. If you think you're going to have a perfect child, it's impossible. It is a process that you're working with, and they're going to act a certain way at every age group. The way we as servants and parents need to think is we want to look at the long-term process. I know that it's going to take time to develop this skill. I'm going to be patient. And with time, with consistency, as long as I'm doing the right thing, they will eventually develop this skill. So, when you see an animal, they are going to act like an animal. When you see a child, they're going to act like a child. You're not going to have a child that's going to act something different, and we need to know that. So we need to know they're going to struggle with a lot of things, and we expect that. The key is to recognize what's happening and respond effectively. So it's not about how to stop our kids from acting like children, but how to guide them to become adults that are successful and healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally. And the better we understand this, the more effective we're going to be as servants, and the more in control we will feel. So again, serving with the end in mind. If we, from the beginning, we teach them to love true wisdom, they will have greater wealth, glory than riches can provide. St. John Chrysostom. So serving is a long-term process. And a lot of times you as servants might feel defeated. How come I don't see the benefits? But understand, you're there for a certain time period. Then they're going to go to someone else. So don't think the time that you serve is going to waste. No, it's not. It's just, you haven't seen the skill develop yet. But they're going to go and they will develop it. It's because of what you've done that's going to help them grow. So that's why we need to have this long-term process. If your goal is to teach the kids how to resolve their own disputes, you must intervene in a way that allows them to develop those skills. So now you're going in with the mindset, I'm not there to solve their problem. I want them to learn how to solve their own problem. And keep that in your mind at all times. Any issue that occurs, okay, what can I do to make them develop that skill? And do not let the short term get in the way of the long term. Because the short term is easy. So the easy way out doesn't always work. For example, if you want a child to learn how to tie their shoelaces, and you want to leave quickly, you have two options. The easy way out is do it for them, and it's done. The long way is to let them struggle, And so sometimes we have to let them struggle to be able to develop the skill to do it. So there has to be this patience, and I know you can do it. We know you can, but you have to say, no, it's not about me. It's about this child now that is learning how to develop this skill. And I know sometimes we're in a rush, and I obviously use your judgment, but if you ever have the ability to be patient and let them develop the skill so they can learn. We can all do their math homework, but is that going to help them? No, they have to struggle. Let them struggle. And don't give them the answer until they struggle. So don't let the short term get in the way of the long term. We don't want the short term of giving them the answers to their homework so it can be done quicker and we can be done. Again, we haven't achieved much. And remember, an eagle, to teach her eaglets to fly, she has to drop them. So you have to drop them and let them struggle to be able to fly. So again, we have to understand, we need them to enjoy struggling. Because when you love to struggle, then you are going to be successful. Because now struggle is not a problem. It's okay, I'll struggle. Because in your mind, struggling is what leads me to success. And so the child is more likely to not feel defeated. He knows that this is just time. And our goal is we want them to behave. We're not going to be with them forever, whether it's parents or servants. So the goal is we want to focus on how they're going to conduct themselves when they leave. So when they go off to college by themselves, or when they get married or have children of their own, they're not with us. So we need to get them to that level. So the goal again is independence. We want competent children, able to have healthy relationships, happily married, independent. We want them to be kind, generous, moral, hardworking, disciplined, have good self-control, be compassionate. And if you think about it, with the two kids that are fighting, if I give them another toy, am I developing any of those things? You're not. Are you teaching them self-control? No, you're actually doing the opposite. Am I teaching them caring and sharing? No, I'm doing the opposite. So here is how we as servants might feel sometimes. I'm bored, want to fight and irritate one another, only if it'll end up with one of us or both of us crying. This is what my kids must say when I'm not in the room. This is how we feel sometimes. We feel like the kids are doing this to give us a hard time. But what is God's goal for our children? We read God's desires that we may lead a quiet and peaceful life in all godliness and reverence. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of truth. This must be implanted in the child's soul from the earliest age, St. Clement of Alexandria. So God's desires for children who know Him, who live in His love, and who walk in His ways. God wants children to know who He is and grow up close to Him and to become saints. That is the success that we're trying to achieve. And to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all things are going to be added to you. So the long-term goal is to raise those children who understand themselves as the child of God, who live their life according to His commandments. So we need to think less of stopping bad behaviors and more in terms of discipline nurturing. Discipline nurtures. So raising children who understands that they are citizens of heaven. So the primary lesson is to know the eternal God, the one who gives everlasting life. So we want them to understand that. And we want them to know that the citizenship is in heaven, from which we eagerly wait for the Savior, our Lord Jesus Christ. So citizens of heaven are those who live in the world according to God's ways, God's values, and God's virtues. When you explain that concept to a child, he's going to know that I'm going to a school with different people. They're going to do different things. They're going to follow, their parents are going to have different rules for them. So we are teaching them that we are different citizens of a different world. When we instill that, they will accept going to school understanding they don't belong there. Or understanding that they cannot do what everyone else does, because you've instilled that mindset that you are different than everybody else. So if there's like a prom or there's a party, they're going to say, okay, it's not for me, because I'm not like them. So God is preparing us for eternity. He desires this because it'll make us and our children truly happy and successful. We seek Him, everything else is going to be taken care of in return. So your child is not a task to complete. It's not a checklist. Sometimes we go in with this attitude, okay, he showered, he brushed his teeth, he needs to be in bed by 8 o'clock, and we want to just do the checklist. We don't have the long-term goal. But know that this child is a person, and you need to provide this child with love as you get these tasks done. It's not just getting them done, it's getting them done while you're providing him with love. And you must pay attention. A lot of times now, the social media has made us not look at the child in the eye. And that's why our social skills are much worse than they were in the past. Now, people who go to interviews, the new generation, people are saying they're horrible. They don't know how to interview. They don't even look at you in the face because of social media. And so even parents, a lot of times a child, he kept asking his dad, dad, and he yelled at him, look at me, because the dad was focused on the phone. So he grabbed his face and he turned his face towards him and said, look at me, Dad. They want your attention. So these children need our attention. So again, the Beatitudes, we want to teach them these Beatitudes. And how we're going to teach them the Beatitudes, we'll talk about different ways we can do that. But we want them to learn these skills. How to be poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn, the meek, the hunger, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, the persecuted. So these are the skills we want them to have. So when you say love suffers long and is kind, this word, how can we translate it into behaviors? Well, if he's fighting with a sibling, you need to teach him love suffers and is kind to a sibling. Love does not envy. It means you cannot envy your brother's Christmas presents. So we need to now take these words and change them into real life scenarios and teach them based on the real life scenarios. Love does not parade itself. You can't show off all the things you have gotten. So we need to teach him that that's what this means. It does not behave rudely. It does not seek its own at the dinner table. Are you just thinking about you, or are you thinking about other people? It's not provoked. So when someone calls him names, it thinks no evil about anyone or your family. It does not rejoice in iniquity when other people get in trouble. Are you happy to see them in trouble, or you feel sorry for them that they're in trouble? Are you trying to lift them up or put them down? So this is a little way of making things more practical. So the goal is our children to live according to the values and virtues of the kingdom of God, not because we're watching them, and not because we say so, but because they believe this deeply in their hearts. So the goal is you want them to know, I'm not doing this because you want me to do it. I'm doing this because I know it's the right thing to do. And I'm convinced that this is the right thing to do. And now you can trust them, because you know when they leave your home, they're going to choose to make the right choice, even when you're not around. So the goal is to raise the children who understand themselves as God's children and live according to His commandments. Getting them to behave is a tempting short-term goal. But raising your children to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Raise them to have knowledge of good but not sin. To be wise against the snares of the devil. Raise them to live wisely and follow the examples of the saints. Raise them by nurturing them with the mile of hidden wisdom of God, that they may seek it all throughout their lives. Raise my children, O Lord, to be made worthy of the kingdom of heaven, and make them heirs of the eternal blessings. So the fruits, like we talked about, is what we want. The fruit of the love, peace, patience, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faith, self-control. Those are the things that we want them to acquire so that they can be successful. And anytime you have a chance to teach something like this, take that advantage. Sometimes we get upset that there's a problem. Problems are not something to always not want. Sometimes the problems and suffering are the best things that can happen to us. Because you know now that this is the time that is going to change them. So you look for these opportunities and you cherish them. Yes, I have a problem. Now they can solve it and get better. So the easy way out is not always the best. And think long term again. Teach them that they can also say no. Help them understand that they will survive if you say no. And that's how you teach them self-control. A lot of times we're scared to enforce the rule. I promise you they will be fine. Enforce it and go through the pain, and they will survive. Because we want them to have that self-control. If they can't have self-control now, they will not be able to have self-control later. You know, they did a test. Have you ever heard of the marshmallow test? So this marshmallow test, they bring kids and they put a marshmallow in front of them, and they have a camera in the room, and they tell them, I'm going to leave the room. If I come back and you still didn't eat the marshmallow, I'll give you an extra marshmallow. If you eat it, then you don't get anything at all. Because they want to see if these kids have self-control. You know, they followed these kids all the way until they went to college. And guess what? The ones who did not eat the marshmallows were the ones that went to graduate school and college and had the highest level of degrees. Why? Because you've learned them to delay gratification. You taught them the concept of self-control. So as you as parents, you may feel sorry for them. Oh, I'll just give it to him. No, if you love them, deprive them of that. Let them understand not everything comes so easy. That if they delay gratification, they're more likely to be successful as they get older. Now everything is abuse. It's crazy now because we're in a time where I feel like we as parents have become a lot weaker and the children have become a lot stronger. And sometimes the children are the ones that run us and tell us what to do and how to do it and when to do it, which I think we need to regain some of that control and understand they're children for a reason and we're an adult for a reason, and their frontal lobe is not developed. It's well into your 20s before your frontal lobe, which prevents you from doing things, being impulsive, is developed. So how can we expect a child to make their own decisions? It's not that we don't trust them, it's that their brain is not developed. You know, that's why you can't give a child keys to a car. That's why they have an age for driver's license. They've done research, they know why this is the time that kids can drive, you know, to reduce the accidents, but also allow them to learn how to do it. So we need to if the kids ever tell you, well, you don't trust me, it's not that I don't trust you, it's your brain is not ready for that. But there's a difference. So our goal is we want the children to know deep in their souls that their true path of success is to struggle, because struggling is what makes you holy and it makes you have eternal life. It's through struggle. And the goal is to enable our children to see themselves and others as children of God, icons of Christ, and as holy images of God himself. Again, the goal is teaching a child to get back up every time he falls, every time something bad happens. It's okay that you fell. The most important thing is getting back up. That's more important. And knowing that it's normal to fall. And if you don't fall, you're not normal, because we all will fall. So successful children know deep within their hearts that they're loved by God and they desire to return that love freely. So now they love God freely. It's not because they're forced to. And you do this by shaping and guiding. We're walking with them on the path, on that journey of growing closer to God in daily life. So do not be preoccupied with having a perfect response every time. We as parents and as servants, we are not perfect ourselves. And we're never going to be able to give the perfect response every single time. But strive for doing the best. And recognize no amount of learning or reading is going to protect you from being a human being. No matter how much you read and do, you're still going to make mistakes because you're a human. And children also need to know that we're human and that we also struggle to learn and we will also make mistakes. And sometimes you can tell them, I also make mistakes, and I'm also learning as well. So that they understand they're not alone in this. And they need to admit, and that it'll make it very easy for them to admit their mistakes. Because they recognize it's normal to make mistakes, and my parents or my servants are going to love me no matter what. So we talked about how they learn and learning through struggling. We teach children through hundreds of parent-child interaction that occur every day over the years. They are shaped in and through each interaction we have with them, from the moment they're born to the moment they leave. So it's all about the way they learn through our interaction, when we interact with our children, in service or at home. And more importantly, they learn by how we respond. Okay? So I remember one time, my daughter was yelling. And so I yelled back. And then she said, you're asking me not to yell, but you're yelling. And that's true. So the way what I'm doing is it's a little bit of a hypocrisy, but the way we respond is so important, because if we respond in a yelling manner, then don't be surprised that they also respond in a yelling manner. So it's when we finally, also when you come to sit down and you know that a child is going to make a mistake, when you have that concept of knowing that they could make that mistake, you're going to be open to mistakes. So if a child knocks the milk, that's normal for a child to knock the milk. So you expect that. And now you're teaching them how to do it. They are still developing the motor skills to be able to hold the glass properly and not spill. They're developing. It's normal for that to happen. So when you know that it's normal, you're less likely to react in a negative way and affect the child's self-esteem. And so being aware is also very, very important. They always say, so again, they learn by how we respond. More specifically, they learn most by how we respond when they misbehave. So children learn that we love them no matter what. They can read your body language. They can tell if you love them or not. And when we respond respectfully, when you're respectful to them, they can see that you're respectful. And when they fight back or talk back, disobey, they stand on tables, they internalize our reaction. It's specifically during the daily struggles that we teach most effectively and shape the child's heart, mind, and their souls. So children learn by how we live and how we relate to them and what we say to them. So when you tell them, you can do it, you're the best, you're a star, you're a champ, you're awesome, good job. These are words that will lift them up and encourage them. Obviously, if you tell them, go away, I don't want to see you, you're a mess, stop bothering me, you're going to amount to nothing, you're no good. These are very hurtful words that will affect them very, very negatively. So struggles are the key. Children do not learn virtue of patience when everyone's getting along. When do you learn to be patient? It's always the struggle that teaches you how to be patient. If you want to be patient, have children. That'll teach you patience, right? That's a skill that we develop when we have children. They don't learn self-control or generosity when they have their own toys. Like we said, they acquire the values and virtues by struggling. There's no shortcut to learning to be patient, to have discipline and self-control. They learn when they struggle to share with each other, and they struggle to do what we ask them or struggle to live within the limits we set for them. As parents and servants, you are depriving them of lessons, very valuable lessons, when you take away their struggle. Don't be quick to take away the struggle, cherish it. The problem is not that they want a toy, but rather what their brother, sister, friend has. That this is how they need to learn to share, is by letting them struggle and not just jumping and giving them an extra toy, or do not deprive them of problems. I challenge you to look for the problems and use these problems as much as possible to instill the virtues and lessons. Be a model. Be the person you want them to be. Do not worry that the children never listen to you. Worry more that they're always watching you. So if they don't listen, that's okay. Worry more that they're watching how you behave, because you're a model. That's where they're going to learn everything. So always tell yourself, how am I talking? How am I acting? What am I saying? And many parents want their children to go to church, We want them to pray, we want them to fast, we want them to go early, but we don't do those things. So how do you expect the child to learn if we are not doing them? And so it becomes harder to get them to do these things. But if you want them to have patience, you as a parent need to show you have patience. When they spill milk, are you showing them that I'm a patient person? They can see that and then they'll say, oh, okay, they didn't scream, they didn't yell, they didn't freak out. So they have patience, and then they react that way as well. So again, we must respond clearly and consistently. Be consistent. If you want to teach them self-control, use self-control in our interactions with them. Are you showing self? Are you freaking out? Are you yelling back? Because then that means you don't have self-control. So how do you expect them to have the self-control? If you want a child to think before they act, then you also must think before you interact with them. So think, how am I going to approach this? Not just quickly, knee-jerk reaction and react. No. What's the best way to react with this child at this point? If you want them to retreat, if you want them to treat others with respect, then you must also treat them and others with respect. If you want to see our children growing closer to God, they need to see us growing closer to God. If you want your children to be models of Christian values in public, and then they see you gossip, criticize, or get angry with family members at home, then they're going to learn that this gospel that we're preaching is something we pretend to believe, but not something real. So again, we want to make everything real. Psychologically healthy children. There's some confusion on whether praising kids, and I think I got that question, is good or bad, because it can be a confusing concept on whether it can cause a child to develop pride. If you're constantly praising them too much, we worry, is this going to make them proud? And we want to teach our children respect for themselves and others and God and His church. So they do best when they acquire a deep sense of self-respect and respect for others. So children who are neglected, dismissed, criticized, attacked, or abused by the parents, they will internalize these negative, destructive ideas about themselves, and then they'll carry it in when they become adults. It also leads to depression, anxiety, and personality disorders. So they tend to internalize ideas, feelings, and beliefs about themselves, like I'm bad, I'm unlovable, nobody cares about me, I'm a burden. These are lies and contrary to the gospel. God loves us deeply and cherishes each and every one of us, no matter how we behave. It's the decision we make in life which can draw us closer to God and the fullness of life, or push us away. So we want our children to internalize this truth in their hearts. And if we treat them with love and respect all the time, and especially when they misbehave, they will learn that. They will only learn unconditional love when they experience you providing them with that unconditional love and respect, even when they misbehave. And that's where we say we enforce natural consequences, but I still love you, you're still my child, you're still the child of God. But again, remember, this does not entail like avoiding the discipline, or just because they said sorry, okay, let them get away with it. That doesn't fly. So avoid insulting, mocking, destructive criticism to your children. Respect them as persons and set limits for them. So if you want to teach them respect, they need to feel respected, even when they talk back. If we want them to learn to listen, we need to listen to them. They need to be heard, even when they don't listen to us, because we're the parent. If you want them to know the nature of God's love for them, they need to experience this God's love from us, particularly when they're unloving towards us. So they do learn what they live most deeply and when they struggle and misbehave. So what we say to our children in a struggle is written in their hearts for a lifetime. So what we say to them when they're struggling. Beware of the negative comments that you might say, like you're lazy, you're selfish, you're mean, you don't listen. Avoid these common criticisms, because they will carry on this message as they get older. It's just stuck inside their heart. They can hear it replay. So remember, kids don't choose to disobey, but are rather learning to listen to instructions even when they're exhausted or tired or do not want to. So they're learning. And mistakes are part of the possible school at home. So engrave things on their heart that will be useful, as listen to each other's words. First we clean up, then we rest. Be kind to your sister. See, the words that you're using is very different. It's not criticism as much as first we clean up and then we rest, instead of, oh, you're a mess. you see the different terminology that we used here? You don't know, you're so mean to your sister, you're a horrible person. Or be kind to your sister. So you have a choice of what you're going to say to them. When they make a mistake while they're doing homework, you don't say, this child did not choose to make that mistake. It's not like he wants to make a mistake on his homework. What we do when they do make a mistake, we mark it wrong, we give him a grade, and we tell him to try again or figure it out. And this is the same approach we need to use. It's the same concept with a child not listening. We'll do one more slide and take a break. Is that okay? Okay. So, same message, different approach. So, destructive criticism. Stop being rude. What's a better way to use instead of the destructive? Stop being rude, be patient. Or you're so selfish. Instead of saying you're so selfish, you can say share. Instead of saying don't talk like that, you can say speak kindly. If you want to say you're mean to your sister, how does a kind sister respond? So you're no longer throwing this destruction at them. It's more constructive now. Stop being a bully. Or you say, what does a kind brother do? Or quit yelling at me, as I want to hear respectful talk. Instead of, don't yell at me, I want to hear respectful talk. Or you're lazy. You can say, you can validate, it's hard to do your work when you want to play. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do. But not that you're lazy. Don't be stupid. You can say instead of that, use good judgment. So use language filled with virtues of God. How we speak to your children is going to teach them how they see themselves in the world. And imagine, your son or daughter in college, and it's Thursday evening and he has homework. And his friends ask him, let's go out. What do you want him to think, inside? What are the words that you told him when he was younger that he's going to hear now while he's in college? I'm lazy, all I want to do is lie around. Or, before I go out, I need to finish my homework. Not I'm lazy, no, it's I was taught to finish my work before I go out. So, in a future marriage, what is better to write on a child's heart? Why are we always so mean? Or you're so selfish? Or be kind and think of that caring response that you can give, that they can carry on that message as they get older.